Good evening. So all beings want to be free of suffering and abide in lasting happiness. Despite having this wish, beings continue to experience suffering and have unwanted circumstances continuously befall us. Moreover, we will continue to suffer as long as we stay bound in these suffering realms of samsara. So to be able to gain freedom from the suffering realms of samsara, we need to eliminate the cause for our suffering. And the cause for our suffering is our afflictions. And these afflictions, they abide on the continuum of each suffering being. Afflictions such as ignorance, anger, attachment, and so forth. It's these that cause us to suffer and create the causes for further suffering. So the very presence and the expression of the afflictions lead us to suffer and to create the causes to suffer in the future. And through their expression, we bring suffering into the lives of others. So recognizing, therefore, the need to abandon the cause of suffering, the afflictions, one strives to develop the strength of mind to eradicate them. So where we are in this, we're right at the start of the chapter on patience, and this first section of 10 or so verses is about looking at the faults of one affliction in particular, that of anger. So here in this section, we look at the faults of anger and briefly also at some benefits of patience. Last week, in the first verse, we looked at one of the grave faults of anger, that if anger is expressed towards a bodhisattva with a motivation which would be of anger infused with ignorance, then the result of such anger is that extensive virtue that has been accumulated over an extensive period, virtue from practices of generosity, expressions of veneration towards the three jewels, as well as ethics. This virtue, this extensive amount of virtue, is overcome by the fault of anger in relation to a great being, namely a bodhisattva. So continuing now with the second verse, and again this is in the section of verses looking at the faults of anger. There is no non-virtue like anger. There is no fortitude like patience. Therefore, meditate on patience assiduously in a wide variety of ways. Looking at the first line, there is no non-virtue like anger. So again, I'll first explain the very first word here, which is translated as anger. In Tibetan, there are two different words, two different common words for anger, both of which have the same meaning. So this is just what Genla said. And then as a translator, just to repeat again, that this therefore encompasses the entire range of minds, because you'll see in the various translations you may be looking at, sometimes it's anger that's translated, or hatred, or rage is sometimes translated, as well as to softer forms of anger like frustration and annoyance. All of them are included within the term anger. So hence in my translation, I'll just use that one word. So this mind of anger, it is it's a compounded phenomenon, which means it comes about necessarily in dependence on causes and conditions. Without the required causes and conditions, there won't be any state of anger arising. So immediately preceding anger, or anger itself, will come from an immediately preceding mind that is, this Tibetan word would literally be unpleasant. So what it means here is a state of mental unhappiness. So it can be quite a disturbed state, or not such a disturbed state. From that, it can grow into frustration, annoyance, or even up to rage and hatred. So the consciousness, the mind of anger, is preceded by a mind that is disturbed, that is unhappy. And that mental state itself comes from a preceding cause. And that, if we put it in a general sense, we can say it can come from something going against our wishes or meeting something unwanted. So to give, and so from meeting something that you do not want, something unwanted, or things going against our wishes, the mind gets frustrated, annoyed, disturbed, and anger arises. So if we take some illustrations, because if we identify the cause, then we know what to eradicate so as to not give rise to the unwanted result. So what leads to anger is a mind being disturbed, not at peace, not gentle, and that comes from things going against our wishes. So, for example, hearing unpleasant sound. So it could be a hideous sound, awful piece of music, or someone saying. And from that sound, now like Anna says, from that sound, now many emotions come. In your case, from the red face, we can imagine it's embarrassment. So to return to what Genla was saying, so from hearing a sound that we dislike, or someone saying something that we don't want to hear, criticizing, being rude to us, whatever it may be. So this includes things, hearing something, in this case, something going against what we'd like, or meeting something unwanted. So someone saying something may not be rude or harsh, but it's not the kind of thing we want to hear. It goes against our own views, perhaps. From this, the mind gets disturbed and anger arises. So that's an illustration of sound. So it can be a sound or speech. Then it could also be in terms of activities. So someone doing something that we dislike, or we are engaging in an activity and someone hinders us in some way. From this, the mind becomes in a disturbed state and anger arises. So therefore, we recognize that this resultant mind of anger comes from its preceding causes. So causes such as those disturb the mind and anger arises. Looking at the first line then, there is no non-virtue like anger. So from the arisal of anger, non-virtue is going to be accumulated. It can be non-virtue solely through one's mental process, but certainly can be through, if one's unhappy state is expressed in this non-virtue of speech, and it can come about through the accumulation of, or engaging in physical activity. So from anger, we can create non-virtue with our body, speech, or mind. So the easiest illustration, the commonest example perhaps, is when the mind is upset. What follows is a vocal expression. One may well speak harshly towards someone else, or one may speak in a divisive manner, or even a lie to try and hurt or deceive. So in this way, from anger, non-virtue is accumulated. And of course, non-virtue, we see, again, looking at the first line, there's no non-virtue like anger. So it's fairly strong non-virtue. But of course, from anger, stronger expressions can come than these illustrations of speech. Relatively speaking, from the non-virtue that anger can lead to, speech is often not amongst the very strongest. But also then to make a point here, when it says there is no non-virtue like anger, of course, what it does not mean is that only anger leads to non-virtue. So from other afflicted minds, such as attachment, jealousy, pride, non-virtue can be accumulated. These afflictions can spur anger and the accumulation of non-virtue, or the other afflictions themselves can accumulate non-virtue. So it's not only that anger accumulates non-virtue, other afflictions too do as well. Moreover, it's not necessarily that anger is always the affliction that accrues the greatest non-virtue, but speaking in general terms, it can be understood in this way. So I've explained a bit about this first line, there is no non-virtue like anger. So again, in general, it really can be said that anger is going to accrue more non-virtue than other afflictions such as attachment. So in this way, we understand this first line. There's no non-virtue like anger. It is really, in most circumstances, quite unique in its destructive capacity. So as we saw last week, it overcomes. So it overcomes previously accumulated virtue, and it can overcome an extensive amount of previously accumulated virtue. Moreover, because this is now, again, just to say, this is in the section of looking at faults. So that's the one fault already looked at from anger. Further faults is it destroys our good mood. If we are in a good mood, and even mild anger can destroy our mood, and with strong anger can destroy the rest of our day. This we know. Moreover, anger leads to physical harm. Again, this is something we've come to recognize. It harms our body, especially if one is regularly angry. So we see there the scope of anger is really quite extensive. It harms us now, and physically and mentally, and through destroying past virtue, it limits, overcoming past virtue, it limits that virtue's capacity to benefit us in the future. Moreover, anger accumulates non-virtue, which will also harm us in the future. So in this way, we see how anger harms us both now and in lives to come. And furthermore, anger does not only harm us. Its expression brings harm to others. It harms others right now and can lead them to responding to us with anger and thereby accumulating non-virtue, and they suffer in the future due to our arisal of anger. So in this way, we come to recognize more of the faults of anger. So a way to understand also, or to read into this first line, is there is no non-virtue like anger, for example, attachment. In other words, anger is a more powerful non-virtue than attachment. So attachment, like anger, has many expressions, but it's highly unlikely it is going to have the same negative, the extent of the negative outcome from attachment is not likely to be nearly as strong as that from anger. So to be clear, attachment, it's an affliction. It leads to the accumulation of virtue and suffering. That's not being refuted here, but it is not like anger, in that when attachment arises, the mind may well not become unhappy. We often, with attachment, engage in things that we like. So the mind is quite happy. Moreover, with the arisal of attachment and acting out under the influence of attachment is not necessarily going to bring harm to others. Anger, much more likely. And thirdly, under the influence of the mind of attachment, we may well engage in virtuous activities. We may well try to help others that we are attached to. So attachment may actually lead to the engaging in virtue. And then maybe it's the fourth one. Unlike anger, this is linking back to last week's verse, unlike anger, attachment does not lead to the overcoming, or literally translated as the destruction of virtue, or maybe it's clearest to say the impeding the ripening of previously accumulated virtue. Attachment doesn't have that effect, but anger, as we saw last week, does. So to give further illustrations to show just how bad anger is compared to other afflictions, and again, just to be clear, all afflictions lead to accumulation of non-virtue. All afflictions need to be abandoned. So it's not to dismiss the harm that other afflictions lead to, but to emphasize the harm that that anger leads to. So if we take two people who have a loving relationship, say two spouses, if there is attachment between them, the way they'll speak to each other will be with gentleness, with care. And the way they will physically interact with others, they may give gifts, they'll do things to help each other. So we generally would say those two have a good relationship. Whereas if a relationship between two spouses is fueled by anger, they will speak to each other harshly. There may even be physical violence. So anger radically transforms any relationship in a negative way. And again, anger leads to extensive harm for oneself, both now and in the future, as well as bringing harm to others. Whereas attachment, it can also lead to building of good connections between people, friendships or good relationships between people. And attachment thereby also helps in leading one to be virtuous through helping others, giving gifts and so forth. So we see with afflictions such as attachment, there can be sides of it which are not entirely or not solely non-virtuous, but actually virtuous behavior can have a motivation mixed with attachment. Also pride, which is a destructive affliction, can also act in a way that leads to, is involved with good outcomes coming. For example, competitiveness. This may help encourage someone to be, say, more generous than they otherwise would be, to help others when they otherwise wouldn't, or to develop skills that they'd otherwise not. So therefore, other afflictions like attachment, like pride, can be involved with virtuous activities. Anger, not so much. Anger really stands alone amongst the afflictions in terms of the amount of destruction it can do. All that being said, there are still some other particular cases of other afflictions that are destructive like anger can be. And again, thinking back to the verse mentioned last week, in terms of overcoming of the potential for previously accumulated virtue to ripen. Here we can think of wrong views that one holds very closely, or as acting or speaking very badly about one's spiritual teacher, having a dismissive attitude towards him, deprecating him, looking down on him about something. This then can be gravely non-virtuous too. So it's, and these special circumstances, they lead to karmic results not dissimilar from anger or similar to anger. In the second line, there is no fortitude like patience. So in the years of hearing teachings, you know there are many excellent virtuous qualities that we need to develop within, such as generosity, ethical restraint, and so forth. But patience stands out as being a particularly important mind to deliver. Because if one has fortitude like patience, which means through having developed patience, one has the ability or the fortitude or the ability to undergo hardships, to bear what is difficult. This is a great quality for one to continue to develop other good qualities within. Therefore, meditate on patience assiduously in a wide variety of ways. As has just been mentioned in the previous line, there are so many benefits to having a fortitude, attitude of fortitude coming from patience. Therefore, one should meditate on patience assiduously in a wide variety of ways. So the third and fourth line is the outcome one comes to having reflected on the faults of anger and the great benefits of patience, whereby one recognizes that I encounter so many hardships in life and I will continue to encounter them. But if I have a fortitude in dealing with them, in particular, and not just a resilience, but a fortitude born from patience, all these hardships will not be experienced as hardships. Why? Because, as mentioned last week, the meaning of patience is it is a mind that is undisturbed in the face of hardships. Therefore, when one encounters hardships, one's mind is undisturbed. One does not therefore experience suffering or hardships or problems as such, because one's mind stays calm and undisturbed. Where this is so important is that through being able to deal with life's hardships, or to express it differently, through being able to deal with the arisal of the afflictions and prevent them from overwhelming one, a confidence grows inside, a deep inner strength that comes from recognizing, I am transforming my mind. I can do this. And the training in patience uniquely brings it in a way that is abundantly clear that things that I've encountered in the past, perhaps I'm experiencing grave pain or illness, a severe illness. In the past, I know I would have responded very differently. Right now, I'm dealing with this so well because of my training. This then will just add to one's confidence and motivation to strive in cultivating the various qualities of the path within. So whilst other good qualities such as generosity and ethical restraint are also indispensable, they do not have the same outcome as patience does in terms of giving us this confidence through the recognition that I can deal with my inner hardships, with the arisal of afflictions through encountering illness, things not going as I wish by encountering illness or other people having hardships with them. Thereby, with this confidence, one knows I can deal with life's challenges rather than in the past when I got angry and felt overwhelmed by life's hardships. Therefore, recognizing this great benefit of the fortitude that arises from patience, meditate on patience assiduously in a wide variety of ways. To summarize the verse a little, looking again at the first line, there is no non-virtue like anger. So here, a further outstanding characteristic of anger is that when anger arises, any love or compassion that we have been cultivating is immediately overwhelmed. So if we had been feeling a tenderness or closeness towards someone, or towards others in general, towards others, and then anger arises, that tenderness will be totally overwhelmed. Moreover, because of the arisal of anger, that serves as an obstacle for the generation again of love and compassion. Imagine if you're regularly angry towards a person. It's very difficult then to generate genuine love and compassion for that person. And therefore, through the obstacles that anger create for the generation of love and compassion, it becomes inconceivable that one will be able to generate bodhicitta without having cultivated patience. So if we think of the faults then of other afflictions, attachment, pride, and so forth, again, they lead to non-virtue and they need to be abandoned, but they do not create obstacles such as these to the rise of love and compassion. They do not lead to the overwhelming of one's already cultivated love and compassion and create severe impediments to the future cultivation of love and compassion. So recognizing the great harm, the outstanding harm that anger brings, one must, now the second line, look carefully at the benefits that come from cultivating patience. So if one has developed a fortitude arising from patience or based in patience, then with whatever of life's hardships and problems and difficulties one encounters, one will be able to deal with that. That will lead to a confidence. Moreover, one will see one's love and compassion growing unimpeded by anger. That too encourages one. And with this growing confidence in one's ability to transform one's mind, one's confidence in one's ethical restraint will grow because one sees one's keeping the afflictions at bay and will recognize that this is possible because one is keeping one's ethics well and will want to continue to do so. So too will your practice in patience serve to enhance your wish to continue to cultivate the good qualities of generosity because you're recognizing, I can do this. Training my mind is possible for me. It is within my capacity. So therefore, now concluding the verse, therefore, meditate on patience assiduously in a wide variety of ways. When training in patience, one should do so in a wide variety of ways. So what does a wide variety of ways in the fourth line refer to? It refers to that it's imperative that to develop qualities such as patience, one does so by using reasoning, reasons, and using one's intelligence. And one will come to understand a wide variety of reasons, firstly, the faults of patience, and then a wide variety of reasons for presenting how to cultivate patience, when is it needed, how to do so, and so forth. So a wide variety of reasons that one can apply in various circumstances need to be learned and then cultivate the habituation to them. This is the meaning then of a wide variety of ways. Some of these wide variety of ways, the reasoning to base one's training in, have already been mentioned. So to remind of what we spoke about earlier tonight, which is that anger only comes about in dependence on causes. So anger itself, this afflicted consciousness, comes from a disturbed mind or an unhappy mind. So this disturbed mind then, it too comes from causes. And these causes are very wide, but we try and narrow it down into a couple of categories. So things, encountering things that we do not like, or our wishes being impeded. And this can be done through what others doing something, or saying something, or just our own thoughts about something. Most commonly, it's our own thoughts against something, or what others say or do. And the reaction, the strength of the reaction that follows within us, or the strength of the degree of magnitude to which our mind becomes unhappy or disturbed, depends on how much we wanted things to go in a particular way. How strong our attachment is to things going in a particular way or not going in a particular way. And when someone does something contrary to how we want it to be, if our want here, how we want something to be, if that want is strong, our mind is going to be greatly disturbed. If we are quite light about our wants, then our mind is going to be far less disturbed. So these then are the kinds of causes that come about, that lead to the mind being disturbed, that lead to anger arising. Because again, in this fourth line, it says one needs to use reasoning to cultivate patience. So looking now at even more granular detail in the sequence of events, a sequence of causes that lead to the arisal of anger. So we have the arisal of anger preceded by this disturbed or unhappy state of mind, and preceding that is another mind that I haven't thus far mentioned, and that is a mind of confused ignorance, a mind of lack of knowing that precedes the unhappy state of mind, the disturbed state of mind, which leads to the rise of anger. And at the beginning of the sequence is things going against our wishes, or meeting the unwanted, or things not going as we want them to. So I'm just going more granularly. Preceding the disturbed state of mind, the unhappy state of mind, is this mind of confusion, of lack of knowing. So the sequence is something happened against our wishes. There's this confused ignorance. So this confused ignorance, it's not the usual word translated as ignorance, but a word that are translated as confused ignorance, because it's a not knowing something. So it's nothing to do with reality, as in emptiness, but it's about not knowing. Then we have the mind gets disturbed and anger arises. So that's the sequence presented. So to talk now about this confused ignorance. So what it means in this context, because in other contexts this word is used for example, not knowing what to do and what is virtuous and should be engaged in and what's non-virtuous and should be avoided. That not knowing is this confused ignorance. So what it means here is that one is not using one's wisdom, or better translated here, one's intelligence. One is not using one's intelligence, and therefore the mind gets disturbed. So this confused ignorance is a mind that is unintelligent. It's not necessarily doing anything, but it's rather to mark the fact that at this crucial point where things are going against our wishes and the mind is liable to get disturbed and therefore angry, we are not using our intelligence. This is the role here of confused ignorance. It's not understanding, it's not using the intelligence, really. So now to hopefully make it clearer with an example. You have a particular wish for things to go in a certain way, and maybe someone with authority comes and says, no, it's going to be in a different way. And from that, you get annoyed with them. So immediately, a skilled practitioner will have challenged this confused ignorance by having trained their mind to develop their intelligence or their wisdom, but intelligence is better here. Develop their intelligence. So as soon as the mind recognizes, oh, something unwanted has happened. This person has told me not to do something that I want to do, for example. So something unwanted has happened. If one's mind is well trained, immediately intelligence will kick in and we'll remind ourselves, this person only wants to be happy. Therefore, they are saying, don't do this, rather do that. That's their sole motivation. They are not meaning to interrupt my plans or to obstruct me. Even if they know what I want to do and they are knowingly obstructing me, their underlying motivation is a wish for happiness. This is really what's propelling them. And understanding, well, my wishes being fulfilled, their wishes being fulfilled, at that level, there is no difference. They want to be happy, I want to be happy. Thinking like this would calm us down immediately, and the mind wouldn't get disturbed, and anger wouldn't arise. So this is how this is a method, again, the fourth line, in a wide variety of ways. So this is a method or a way, a manner, in which one trains one's mind so that we rely on our intelligence to recognize when things are going against our wishes. Now there's a grave possibility that anger may arise. I need to apply a countermeasure, and you use your intelligence and do so. So this is one further example. There are still 132 verses to come, which will present many, many more techniques or methods to cultivate in your mind, train your mind in to deal with the life's challenges and thereby cultivate patience. So to counteract this confused ignorance, one needs to use one's intelligence, and this means using reasons. So one can recognize that this person now is saying or doing something contrary to how I would like things to go. So therefore, I would need to now apply my intelligence. Otherwise, I'm liable to get upset. So perhaps this person has no idea what my wishes are. They perhaps have no idea they are going against my wishes. Quite possible. Or perhaps they do know, but they have specific reasons that I'm unaware of for going against my wishes. Entirely possible. There is no need for anger. So immediately in this way, using one's intelligence, one prevents the rise of anger and can rather have a discussion with the person. Moreover, if you notice your mind is now angry, you can also, if you've done the prior training, use other reasons. This anger has arisen because this person has said or done something contrary to my wishes. Therefore, this anger is an expression of my self-cherishing, wanting things to go my way, putting my wishes first and foremost, and ignoring the wishes of the other person. So if one's done a good training before, immediately recognizing one's self-cherishing and knowing the faults of this, that will be enough to pacify your mind, to calm your mind, and lead you back to where you should be, and have a discussion with this person. Calm and rational discussion with a mind that's patient, that's undisturbed. Or a further antidote or technique that can be applied here, if one is trained, is to recognize that if this person, all they've done is gone against my wishes. This expression of anger that's arisen, this anger that has arisen is an expression of my ignorance of self-grasping. I'm grasping at myself strongly because I'm grasping at my wishes strongly, the I and the mine. And again, if one has reflected well on the I and the mine, that will serve to dissipate one's disturbed mind. So here, one can use more simple reasons, such as that this person, maybe they have no idea what my wishes are, or maybe they do, but they have reasons. No need to get angry, let's have a talk. Or one can use deeper reasoning through recognizing anger as an expression of self-cherishing or of the ignorance of self-grasping. And that too will serve to calm the mind, and thereby one can have a conversation. So these then are further reasons, or amongst the wide variety of ways, these are further ways that one can employ. When you engage in this meditation, the way I encourage you to do this meditation, as always, repetition over a sustained period is crucial, and do it in a forward and a reverse sequence. And in particular, when you're starting out, more of it will be theoretical because you need to get in meditation familiar with the sequence. So how does anger come about? And you think first, I encounter something either going against my wishes or not being in accordance with my wishes. So something unwanted. From that, I'm told I'm not thinking clearly about the situation, and thereafter I'm told my mind is getting agitated, and then anger of some form of strength arises. So that's the sequence, and then you just remind yourself of the sequence. Then you think of an incident, a time when you got frustrated, annoyed, or angry. So now you go in reverse. You see that you're angry, you remember the time you're angry, you'll immediately remember the reason. And so, okay, there's the angry mind. I'm told this was preceded by a disturbed mental state, and that was preceded by this confused ignorance. So, and then prior to that, I encountered something that was said or done that I disliked. So the confused ignorance, let's put some energy there, because the antidote to that is using one's intelligence. How could I rather have thought in this particular instance? And you're using something from your life, maybe early in the day or this month or in the past. And you think to yourself, so this person, what they were expressing was, through words or action, their wish to be happy. That's the deep underlying motivation. My annoyance came because it was going against my own wishes for happiness. This is all. My wishes for happiness are no way superior to theirs. We all have the right to happiness. And that, immediately you're training yourself in an antidote. Moreover, this person, by impeding me or acting in a way I dislike, or talking in a way I disliked, perhaps they have no idea what my wishes were or what my likes or dislikes. So they weren't doing anything intentionally. And even if they were, they maybe had good reasons for that. And even if they didn't, still, their underlying wish was for happiness. The primary wish, the deep wish, wasn't to upset me. It was to achieve their own happiness. So in this way, we're introducing three different ways that we could think about, could use our intelligence to deal with such a situation. That they don't know what my wishes are, and even if they do, they may well have good reasons. And if they don't, well, the underlying wish is to be happy, not to harm me. So in this way, you have trained your mind in how to deal better with that same situation. Then you do it through many situations and do the same ones again and again to develop the skill. And if you've done a prior study and meditation on ignorance, the self-grasping, and the self-cherishing mind, you use those two as antidotes to this confused ignorance. In other words, to the lack of thinking about a situation, coming to know a situation. And if you train like this well, you will, and repeatedly over a sustained period, you will be able to deal skillfully with similar situations in the future. The third verse. When the mind holds onto the pain of anger, the mind will never experience peace. Joy and happiness will not be reached, and unsettled sleep will not come. Look at the first two lines. When the mind holds onto the pain of anger, the mind will never experience peace. When the mind is suffering, when it's in pain, such a mind that is in such a state can never be calm, can never be peaceful. The third and fourth line present further faults of anger. Joy and happiness will not be reached, unsettled sleep will not come. Joy and happiness, so this refers to mental joy and physical happiness will not be reached. So in other words, whilst the mind is unhappy, whilst the mind is angry, one will not be experiencing mental joy, and it has a harmful impact on one's body too. Furthermore, so the way I've translated the words are fine, but the mind is unsettled and sleep will not come. So the mind being unsettled isn't necessarily what leads to sleep not coming. These are two further negative faults of anger. So sleep is impeded or impaired by being angry, and also one's mind's not stable. One's mind is unsettled by being disturbed by anger. So this verse points out further faults of anger. So the faults include that one, whilst angry, will experience no inner peace. One's mind will not be joyful at all, and therefore there's a negative, harmful impact on our body. Also, our sleep becomes disturbed. We cannot enjoy food, even if it's delicious, because of being upset. We will not even taste it as delicious. Or if we're eating with friends, we will not even enjoy their company. And furthermore, because the mind is unsettled, we will not be able to let go of the anger. The anger will continue to swirl around within us. So therefore, seeing these faults of anger, we need to develop patience. To conclude then with a brief summary in what we've looked at tonight in these two verses. The summary is for you to meditate on, to take what's presented here, as well as what I presented at the end of the previous verse a few minutes ago in terms of how to meditate. So what I'll say now, put together with that. So we started out by talking about some of the faults of anger, that how it is a standout affliction amongst all the harmful afflictions. Anger really stands out from other afflictions, in that it serves to cause so much pain and harm to ourselves now and in lives to come, as well as to others. And it's including with the verse we looked at last week, it serves to overcome previously accumulated virtue, as well as leading to the accumulation of tremendous non-virtue in a way that makes it stand out from the other afflictions, as we looked at earlier tonight. Whereas and therefore, these faults that have been mentioned, as well as in this verse now about losing mental happiness, harming our bodies, and so forth, what we've seen in this third verse, these faults on anger need to be reflected on, not just accepted. Yes, I know anger is bad, I don't want to be angry, but we need to develop this strength of mind that sees anger as never justified, never acceptable, and this ongoing determination that when it's arising, not to allow it to abide, not to tolerate it, not to ever see it as acceptable. So this is why it's imperative we reflect again and again on the faults of anger, so that in the future, when we are angry, when anger does arise, the virtuous factors of inner shame or embarrassment, if we've expressed it to others, arise and serve to help us to deal with anger again and to apply our training in patience again. And then furthermore, we looked at some of the benefits of being patient. And the key benefits of being patient, which means that when one deals with unwanted circumstances, one recognizes, unlike previously, my mind is undisturbed. I'm not finding what this person has just said to me, or what they are doing, or my physical pain. It's not disturbing me like it used to. And this recognition of the transformation that the training in patience brings leads to a deep confidence that I can do this. And this then serves to spur us on in all our spiritual endeavors, cultivating ethics, generosity, and so forth. And so this key benefit of confidence in training that comes from training in patience. So recognize that and use this to spur you to train in patience. Looking at the faults of anger, that too leads to spurring one to train in patience. How to train in patience, as mentioned in more detail a few segments before. Look at how anger arises, and in particular, see the sequence again and again, but in particular, train in the reasons given. Train in the reasons given so that one can counteract this confused ignorance that stands between the mind getting disturbed and meeting a potential source for our anger, usually what others say or do, or our thoughts, a train of thoughts. So you train then in the reasoning, and if you have prior training in reflecting on self-cherishing, it's excellent to recognize that our afflictions, particularly that of anger, are an expression of our self-cherishing. For example, attachment, I wanted to go this way, and that's an expression of self-cherishing. And when it doesn't, anger arises. This is too arising from our self-cherishing. If you come to see the faults of self-cherishing, this will spur you to turn away from anger and to embrace patience. Okay, thank you. Then we can conclude there for tonight. Thank you very much.